Viewers, it's a special broadcast on Times Now. At a time when so much has been said and written about Sanatan Dharma, we have a new book. The book I have in my hand, it's called Rama, a Man of Dharma, and is written by Priya Arora. Priya ji, the author, is now joining us. Priya ji, welcome to Times Now. First of all, let me congratulate you on this new book. And I must tell you that I've written it in parts, and it is beautifully written. So I want to begin by asking you, what inspired you? What led to you picking up this theme and then converting that idea into a book?
Well, first of all, thank you for appreciating my work. Why I wrote this Ramayana when there's so many of them already is because, today we actually have lost sight of the original Ramayana, which is the Valmiki Ramayana. There are many versions of the Ramayana, and the Valmiki Ramayana is the original. And it was composed by Valmiki, who was a contemporary of Rama. So it's composed as a biography to speak of a man of Dharma. And Dharma is not really religion, but it is ethics and principles. It's more to do with ethics and principles. And Rama was that man, the man of principles. And those principles are everlasting principles. And I felt that that aspect needed to be revived, because today we worship Ram. We think of him as a deity, but we forgot that he was also a king. He was also a person who walked this land. He's our ancient ancestor. And that aspect, I felt, is lost today, sadly lost today. And my writing sort of is directed to bringing that out.
Yeah, it's a good point you're making. In fact, I was about to come to that because, like you said, Dharma is a complex and multifaceted concept in our philosophy. So, and like you said, Rama is often seen as the perfect man, the ideal king. So how does your book reconcile the human challenges he faced with adherence to the concept of Dharma?
So, Rama was, when he took birth, he was an avatar of Vishnu. But there's a twist here. He did not know that. So when he lived his life, he lived as a man. He did not live with any divine help. And the reason for that was because the boon that Ravana had protected him from being killed by anyone, like no Devta, no Rakshasa, no Asura, no bird, no beast, no snake, nothing. Nobody could kill him except a man. And that was because he left the human beings out of his list, because he said that they were too puny to worry about. So he said, forget human beings. And so that was a loophole. So in that particular avatar of Vishnu on earth, he did not know his divinity. He did not know that he was in any way different from an ordinary man. And that's what makes it special, because whatever he did, whatever principles he followed, and he followed them because he was a person of principles. If he were, you expect, if a person is a divine incarnation, there is an expectation for them to be perfect, right? But it's different if an ordinary human being reaches that level. And that's what it is that was special about him, is he reached that level. And yes, he had a lot of challenges and a lot of issues to deal with, a lot of what they call dharma sankats.
We'll talk about it, but what you're saying, perhaps explain why you've called the title Rama, the man of Dharma, the emphasis on man. And he's also called the Maryada Purushottam, the ideal man who follows the path of righteousness. And I was going through the book. Do you think his unwavering commitment to Dharma makes him relatable to the readers, or makes him more distant from the readers?
Actually, I think it made me really relate to him. All of us here in India know the Ramayana. We sort of grew up with it, and we know the story. But I only really understood it when I embarked on this journey of reading it. And I read it, the Sanskrit to English version. So I was like reading the Sanskrit and then reading the English because, that helps in understanding the Sanskrit a bit. But when you read it in the original, you actually see him as that wonderful human being. That's how you relate to him. Not as Bhagwan, but as a wonderful human being, and a human being that we all should learn from. And if you read the Valmiki, and it's a little different treatment in the Tulsidas Ramayana and the Valmiki Ramayana, and I think that's where your question is coming from, because in the Tulsidas Ramayana, Ram is depicted as in the mode of bhakti. So Tulsidas was a devotee, and it's a beautiful work, but it's a devotional work. So the treatment is different. Whereas in the Valmiki Ramayana, he's depicted as a man who was exceptionally principled. So a man that you and I could relate to. And the dilemmas he goes through, the struggles he goes through, those come out really well in the Valmiki Ramayana.
Oh, let's talk about the dilemmas. In fact, does Rama ever face moments where his sense of dharma is challenged or questioned? And how have you dealt with that, and how he navigated those dilemmas?
So, dharma is one of those things that's not right or wrong. It's not black and white. It's not right or wrong. It's not morality in that sense that we understand it today. It is a concept that has to be understood, and the principles have to be applied based on the situation. So there are many instances, and this is depicted to us also to show us that in our lives, we face similar situations where you have to choose sometimes not between right and wrong, but between two things that are right. So one of the points I will say is like when he separated from Sita. Now that is a point that a lot of people talk about, and they say, "Oh, it was wrong. He was wrong to do that." There's criticism on that,
right?
And that is when you see it very simplistically and not from the point of view of dharma. See, Rama was a king, and he was a dharmic king, because our Vedic kings were not sovereigns. This is another thing that we don't realize, is that they had ultimate power. They had the same power as any king would have, but they ruled democratically. This is a very strange thing that we have forgotten. So a Vedic king in Chanakya's Arthashastra, he actually mentions it there. He says, the king's pleasure will be in his people's pleasure. What pleases them will please him. So the king was not there to have, fun and be fawned over by people. He was there to serve the people. He was an administrator. So Rama was an administrator. So when this situation came up for him to, where his people actually, it wasn't one Dhobi who said it, actually, in the Valmiki Ramayana, it's different.
Right.
The general consensus of the people was that they did not want her in the position of their queen anymore. That was the situation. They felt that she had lived in the house of another man, Ravana, for almost a year, and they felt that for that reason, they did not accept her as their queen. So now this is a dilemma that he was in. On the one hand was his duty as a king. And if you're a democratic king, and in a democracy, you are ruled by those whom you want to rule you. It's not like they're just forced upon you. So that is the situation.
Yeah, his decision to send Sita to exile after the war, despite her proving her purity, is indeed one of the most debated episodes of Ramayana. And, like you said, how does the book approach that decision? And do you believe it was consistent with the larger construct of Dharma?
Yes. So you see, there were two dharmas in conflict here. So what happened was the people felt they did not want her, right? And this was not one person. It was not one Dhobi, which is the general view. In Valmiki's Ramayana, it's not one Dhobi. It's most of the people. It's the majority opinion,
as it were.
So in such a situation where you have a conflict, if he were an ordinary person, he should have obviously upheld his duty as a husband, his pati dharma. But he was not just an ordinary husband, he was a king. So there were two duties that were in conflict here: the duty as a king to serve his people, and duty as a husband to protect his wife. There were two duties. And he thought about it a great deal. The whole night he thought about it. It was a great pain to himself, because they had a very special relationship as a husband and wife. She meant everything to him, which is why he went all the way to Lanka to rescue her. So in this conflict, only one could be upheld. He had actually four choices, right? The first choice would be to ignore the people, which you can't do as a dharmic king. If you're in a democracy, can you ignore the will of the people? You can't. So if you're a dharmic king and you're ruling democratically, then you can't ignore the will of the people. So he could not ignore that. Second option was to say, okay, fine, I'm leaving. You don't like my wife. I'm going with her to the forest. Bye-bye. That was also not possible, because that's dereliction of duty. You cannot give up your duty just for your own personal interest. That's not dharmic. Third option was to send her back to her father, Raja Janaka. That was also not possible for him, because this was someone who was his life. So the only option that was left was to place her in Valmiki's ashram, where he knew she would be looked after, and where they still had the opportunity of her coming back when the people settled down. That door was not closed.
Right.
By placing her in Valmiki's ashram. So it was like the worst, the best of the worst options. Let me put it that way.
Yeah,
it was like a catch-22 situation.
Absolutely, and that's well put. Which is why I want to ask you this. Do you see parallels between the challenges Rama faced in upholding dharma and the ethical dilemmas, that people like us, mortals like us, face in today's fast-changing socio-political climate?
Sure. At every moment in life, we always face a choice between doing what is convenient for us and what is the right thing to do. In fact, this lesson, it's a very beautiful lesson, and it's in the Katha Upanishad, where Yamraj teaches this little boy, Nachiketa, and he says that in life you're always at a crossroads between choosing between Shreya and Preya. So Shreya is that which is ultimately good, and Preya is that which is immediately pleasurable. So I'll give you an example of it. You can set the alarm in the morning to go to the gym, right? When that alarm rings at 5:30 a.m., you can turn it off and say, no, I'm comfortable here. You can choose Preya and say, I'll just enjoy my sleep. I'll sleep in. Or you can get up and go to the gym. That's going to the gym would be choosing Shreya, and hitting that snooze button or whatever and going back to sleep is Preya. So at every moment, this is not in big things. This is in every moment in your life. You're choosing between these two things.
What an example. I'm never going to forget it. And I'm sure people who are watching this will also keep this in mind. Now, writing about a figure as monumental as Rama, Priyaji, must have been a journey in itself. So how has writing this book influenced your personal views on dharma, leadership, and other facets of, life?
I'll tell you, those of us who are lucky to be born in this country, in India, we have a wonderful heritage. Wonderful heritage. And this heritage is beyond religion. And that's why I said it's for everyone. It is a heritage that teaches us to do the right thing. And my journey actually into this was from Vedanta. I got into studying Vedanta, and it became so much part of my life. And then that's why I actually wrote the Ramayana, because all our texts, all our shastras actually are designed to depict Vedanta. Because Vedanta is actually the philosophy which is extremely difficult. It's very abstruse. And if you call somebody for a Vedanta lecture, maybe 6 people will come. And out of those 6 people, I can guarantee you 3 people will be nodding off. It's that, abstruse to come to grips with. But if you teach the same philosophy, the same principles through a story, then you have a huge audience.
Right.
So both the Ramayana and the Mahabharata were composed to teach dharma, and dharma is the essence of Vedanta. That's what Vedanta is all about. It's about teaching you to live a principled life. And both the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, that's their purpose. They're not just stories, because as a story, Harry Potter is a great story.
True.
But it's different from the Ramayana because it's not a dharma grantha.
So let me ask you this then. Do you think this interpretation of Rama will spark a fresh conversation around ancient texts like the Ramayana, the others that you've mentioned, especially among younger audiences?
I hope so. I really hope so, because, I've come to this in middle age. I wish I had learned this when I was younger. And the reason why, and it's not for anything else, it's for one's own personal mental well-being. Because when if you understand these principles, they are principles of life, and they help you really be contented. Because situations happen in life. That's what the Ramayana teaches you. Things will happen. Bad things will happen. I mean, one day you're told you're going to be king of Ayodhya. The next minute you're told, listen, you're going to the forest. And the forest in those days was, as we know, not really a fun place. There were no hotels. There was no facilities there. So that mental resilience is what helps us in life. All of us, even today. I mean, if you'll have challenges, I'll have challenges. Everyone has challenges. That's what life's about. And those who are successful in life have the mental resilience to tough through those challenges. And that's what the Ramayana teaches you. It teaches you to have mental resilience. And that's why even more, I think young people should understand these principles, because if they do, it holds them in good stead for their entire life.
Priyaji, allow me to ask you this. What do you think is the most misunderstood aspect of Rama's character?
So there are a lot of things that are misunderstood. And actually, this probably started about 200 years ago. The first most misunderstood thing is that he's just an avatar of Vishnu, which he was. But the aspect of him as a king who ruled this land, that aspect is forgotten. And it happened because actually started probably 1818, J.S. Mill wrote the history of British India. And in that, he said that all these Ramayana and Mahabharata and all, they're all mythology. And they're all fanciful tales. And thereafter, our Indian intelligentsia, we all sort of we believed that this was just fictional, and all that was left was devotion. The devotion aspect didn't die, but the historic aspect died. So I think that, if that aspect is revived, if we remember that he was a real person, and in my book, actually, I have a whole chapter on that. I've added a supplement in the book to explain these things, because there's so much evidence of him being a real person. And that's very important to know, because if we think of him as a real person, then our attitude changes.
True. Yeah. And before we conclude, Priyaji, I have, let's do a quick rapid fire, if you're okay.
Sure.
What's your favorite quote from the book?
My favorite quote from the book? Now you stumped me, because there's so many. I put a ton of them there, and now that you ask me,
it can happen. It can happen.
Can we go to the next one?
Okay, let's go to the next one. If you could have a conversation with one character from the Ramayana, who would it be, other than Rama?
Other than Rama? I would say I would like to talk to Hanuman.
Okay.
I would like to talk to Hanuman.
One word that you think describes Rama the best according to you. Just one word.
Dharmagnya. He's a man of dharma. So Dharmagnya means one who understands dharma, the nuances of dharma.
And my final question, if you could ask Rama one thing or tell him something, what would it be?
It would be come back.
Well said.
We need you
Priyaji,
today.
I congratulate you on this book once again, and I hope that the readers receive it with the same enthusiasm and energy and the sincerity with which you've written this. I wish you all the best. Thank you for speaking to Times Now.